Tommy's bulldozer hit something metal 6 feet down. When he pried open the rusted box, he found children's drawings, camp photos, and a diary that would expose a killer who'd been hiding for 31 years. What Tommy discovered would unravel the darkest secret in summer camp history. Pine Ridge, Colorado, June 15, 2019. Tommy Martinez had been operating heavy machinery for 15 years, but he'd never seen anything like this. The old Camp Wildwood property had been abandoned since 1988, and his construction company was finally developing it into luxury condominiums. The forest had reclaimed most of the structures, but Tommy could still see remnants of what had once been a children's paradise. His bulldozer blade scraped against something solid, metal. Tommy shut off the engine and climbed down to investigate. 6 feet below the surface, partially exposed, was a rust-stained metal ammunition box. It was heavy, sealed tight against decades of moisture and soil. Tommy pried it open with his crowbar. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags, were items that made his stomach drop. Children's drawings, photographs of smiling kids around a campfire, and at the bottom, a leather-bound journal with Camp Counselor, Summer 1988, written on the cover. Tommy had grown up in Pine Ridge. He remembered the summer when 11 children vanished from Camp Wildwood during an overnight hiking trip. The biggest search operation in Colorado history. No bodies ever found. The camp closed permanently, and the story faded into local legend. But now, holding this box of evidence, Tommy realized the children had never left the property. He called 911 immediately. Sheriff Patricia Wells arrived within the hour, accompanied by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Wells had been a rookie deputy in 1988 when the children disappeared. The case had haunted her entire career. "Mr. Martinez, I need you to show me exactly where you found this," Wells said, pulling on latex gloves. Tommy led her to the excavation site. The metal box sat open beside a pile of dirt, its contents carefully preserved despite 31 years underground. Wells examined the journal first. The handwriting was neat, methodical. The entries began innocuously enough. Daily activities, weather reports, notes about individual campers. But as she read deeper, the tone changed dramatically. Day 12. The children trust me completely now. They follow my instructions without question. Tonight's hike will be perfect. Day 13. It's done. All 11. They didn't suffer long. I've prepared the special place for them. Wells felt sick reading the entries. This wasn't just a murder confession. It was a detailed account of premeditated child killing. CBI agent David Chen processed the scene while Wells coordinated with the coroner's office. Chen was an expert in cold cases involving missing persons, and he recognized the significance immediately. "Sheriff, this journal identifies the killer," Chen said, photographing each page. "Robert Hartley, camp counselor and hiking guide. If he's still alive, we can finally get justice for these families." The journal contained horrific details. Hartley had led the children on what they believed was a special overnight adventure. Instead, he'd taken them to a remote cave system where he'd killed them one by one. The diary revealed his twisted psychology. He viewed children as pure vessels that needed to be preserved through death. Wells ran Robert Hartley's name through the system. He was alive, 73 years old, living in a retirement community in Arizona under his real name. After the camp closed, he'd simply moved away and started a new life. No one had ever suspected the beloved camp counselor. "We need to move fast," Wells told Chen. "If Hartley realizes we found the evidence, he might run or hurt himself before we get answers." The arrest was coordinated between Colorado and Arizona authorities. Wells flew to Phoenix personally to oversee the operation. She wanted to look Hartley in the eye when he was finally confronted with his crimes. Sunrise Gardens retirement community was peaceful and well-maintained. Hartley lived in a small cottage near the golf course, surrounded by flower gardens and bird feeders. He appeared to be a harmless elderly man who spent his days reading and tending plants. Wells knocked on his door at 6 a.m. with 2 Phoenix detectives and FBI backup. "Robert Hartley, I'm Sheriff Patricia Wells from Pine Ridge, Colorado. You're under arrest for the murders of 11 children at Camp Wildwood in 1988. Hartley's face went completely blank. No surprise, no denial, just a strange calmness that chilled Wells to the bone. I wondered when someone would finally dig deep enough, he said quietly, extending his hands for the handcuffs. During the interrogation, Hartley showed no remorse. He spoke about the children's deaths as if discussing a gardening project, methodical, necessary, satisfying. They were becoming corrupted by the modern world, Hartley explained to Wells and Agent Chen. Television, video games, their parents' materialism. I gave them purity through eternal childhood. You murdered 11 innocent children, Wells said, struggling to maintain professional composure. I preserved them. They'll never know disappointment, heartbreak, or the compromise of adulthood. They're perfect forever. The psychological evaluation revealed Hartley as a classic predatory psychopath who had specifically sought employment around children. Camp Wildwood wasn't his first hunting ground. He'd worked at summer camps across the western United States for over 20 years before 1988. How many other children did you kill? Chen demanded. Hartley smiled slightly. Only the special ones, the ones who deserved preservation. The investigation expanded nationwide. FBI profilers estimated Hartley had killed at least 30 children during his 2-decade career as a camp counselor. Bodies were never found because he'd perfected methods of disposal that left no trace. The families of the Camp Wildwood victims were finally contacted after 31 years of not knowing. The pain was overwhelming, decades of hope and uncertainty replaced by the harsh reality of murder. Jennifer Adams had been 8 years old when her brother Michael disappeared at camp. Now, 39, she'd never stopped believing he was alive somewhere. 31 years of wondering, Jennifer sobbed during her victim impact statement. 31 years of birthdays and Christmases, hoping Michael would come home. This monster stole our entire lives, not just Michael's. The community response was massive. Pine Ridge had never fully recovered from the tragedy, and learning the truth reopened old wounds while providing long-awaited closure. Tommy Martinez became an unexpected hero. His discovery had finally brought justice to 11 families, and potentially many more across the country. I was just doing my job, Tommy told reporters, but I'm glad those children can finally rest in peace. The search for the victims' remains began immediately. Hartley's journal contained cryptic references to the sacred burial ground, where he'd hidden the bodies. Using ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs, investigators focused on a remote cave system 15 miles from the old camp. The caves had been sealed with explosives shortly after the children's disappearance, ostensibly for safety reasons, but investigators now suspected Hartley had somehow influenced that decision to hide the evidence. Dr. Maria Santos, the forensic anthropologist leading the recovery effort, approached the unsealed cave entrance with reverence. Inside, they found what remained of 11 children, arranged in a circle around a makeshift altar decorated with camp photos and personal belongings. They were positioned with care, Dr. Santos reported. This wasn't random violence. It was a ritualistic killing with deep psychological meaning for the perpetrator. DNA analysis confirmed the identities. Michael Adams, age 8, Sarah Chen, age 9, Timothy Rodriguez, age 10. All 11 children who had disappeared that summer were finally coming home. The trial was swift. Hartley pleaded guilty to 11 counts of first-degree murder, plus additional charges related to child endangerment and evidence tampering. At 73, he received 11 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. Robert Hartley will die in prison, Judge Catherine Morrison announced. His actions robbed 11 families of their most precious gifts and terrorized an entire community for over 3 decades. During his final statement, Hartley showed no remorse. I fulfilled my purpose. Those children achieved perfection through me. The courtroom erupted in angry shouts from family members. Several had to be removed by bailiffs as they tried to reach Hartley. The Camp Wildwood property was donated to the state as a memorial park. The luxury condominium project was canceled out of respect for the victims. Instead, the land became a peaceful nature preserve with 11 memorial trees planted where the old camp buildings once stood. Tommy Martinez attended the memorial dedication ceremony. His accidental discovery had brought decades of pain to an end while delivering justice to 11 innocent children. Sometimes you have to dig up the past to heal the future, Tommy said, standing beside the memorial grove. The investigation into Hartley's other crimes continued for years. His employment records led investigators to camps across 12 states where additional disappearances had occurred. While many cases remained unsolved, several other victims were identified and their families notified. Sheriff Wells retired shortly after Hartley's conviction, finally able to close the case that had defined her career. She established a foundation dedicated to camp safety and background checks for youth counselors. "No child should ever be harmed by someone they're taught to trust," Wells said at her retirement ceremony. "Robert Hartley betrayed the most sacred responsibility: protecting children." The journal that exposed Hartley's crimes was sealed as evidence, but excerpts were studied by criminal psychologists researching predatory behavior. The methodical documentation of his murders provided rare insight into the mind of a serial child killer. Dr. James Patterson, who interviewed Hartley extensively, published research showing how predators specifically target positions of trust and authority around children. Hartley spent 20 years perfecting his methods, Dr. Patterson explained. He chose isolated locations, gained complete trust from parents and children, then exploited that trust for murder. The Camp Wildwood case became mandatory study material for law enforcement agencies dealing with missing children cases. The investigation techniques used to solve the cold case after 31 years became a template for similar situations. Agent Chen, who had processed the original crime scene, was promoted to head the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. He specialized in cases involving serial killers who targeted children. "The Hartley case taught us that predators often hide in plain sight for decades," Chen explained to a conference of investigators. "They rely on society's trust in authority figures and our reluctance to believe the worst about people who work with children." The families of Hartley's victims found different ways to cope with their delayed grief. Some became advocates for stronger background checks and oversight of youth programs. Others focused on honoring their children's memories through charitable work. Jennifer Adams established the Michael Adams Foundation, providing support for families of missing children. The foundation also funded improved search and recovery technologies. "Michael would be 40 years old now," Jennifer said at the foundation's launch. "He'll never have the chance to grow up, get married, have children of his own. But maybe his memory can protect other children." The Pine Ridge community slowly began to heal. For 31 years, residents had lived under a cloud of uncertainty and fear. Parents had never fully trusted their children's safety, and local businesses related to outdoor recreation had suffered. "We can finally move forward," said Mayor Robert Thompson at a town meeting. "The truth is painful, but it's better than living with unanswered questions." The Memorial Park became a place of pilgrimage for families affected by similar tragedies. Visitors left flowers, toys, and notes for the 11 children who had died so far from home. Tommy Martinez continued working construction, but he never forgot the day he uncovered 31 years of buried secrets. He kept one of the children's drawings, a simple crayon picture of kids playing by a lake under a bright sun. "They were happy when they drew this," Tommy said, showing the picture to his own children. "That's how I want to remember them." Dr. Santos, who had recovered the children's remains, established new protocols for handling mass casualty sites involving children. Her work on the Camp Wildwood case influenced forensic recovery methods worldwide. "Every child deserves dignity in death," Dr. Santos taught her students. "Our job isn't just about evidence, it's about bringing children home to their families." The ammunition box that had preserved Hartley's journal and the children's belongings was kept as evidence, but investigators noted its significance. Without that waterproof container, the evidence might have decomposed beyond recognition. "Sometimes justice depends on accident," Agent Chen reflected. "Tommy's bulldozer hitting that box at exactly the right depth and angle, a few feet in any direction, and we might never have found it." Robert Hartley died in prison 4 years after his conviction, taking his remaining secrets with him. He never revealed the locations of other victims or provided closure for additional families who suspected he'd killed their children. Some monsters refuse redemption until the very end," Sheriff Wells commented after learning of his death. "But at least 11 families finally have peace." The Camp Wildwood murders became one of the most studied cold cases in American law enforcement history. The combination of physical evidence preservation, psychological profiling, and multi-jurisdictional cooperation created a model for solving decades-old child murder cases. Tommy Martinez often drove past the memorial park on his way to job sites. The 11 trees had grown tall and strong, providing shade for visitors who came to remember the children who had died too young. The forest had kept its secret for 31 years, but truth, like those memorial trees, has deep roots that eventually break through any attempt to bury it. Camp Wildwood was gone, but the children it had failed to protect were finally remembered, honored, and at peace. Their killer would never harm another child, and their memory would protect future generations from similar predators. In the end, Tommy's accidental discovery had accomplished what 3 decades of investigation could not. It had brought 11 children home and delivered justice to their families. The buried box had contained more than evidence. It had contained the truth that set everyone free.